Hello, my name is Jamie Long, and I'm a transition vocational rehabilitation counselor with Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And today I'd like to talk to you about transition services. The purpose of vocational rehabilitation services is to help people with disabilities obtain and maintain employment that is consistent with their strengths, interests, abilities, and aptitudes. VR services are eligibility-based and tailored to the individual. They are not intended to be emergency services, but they are not time-limited or intended to be long-term. They are arranged and provided by vocational rehabilitation counselors with consideration for individual choice. Eligibility criteria. The customer has a physical or mental impairment. The impairment constitutes or results in substantial impediment to employment. The customer requires VR services to prepare for, enter, engage in, or advance in competitive integrated employment consistent with the customer's strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, and informed choice. The customer can achieve an employment outcome unless pre-eligibility trial work experiences demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that the customer cannot achieve an employment outcome because of the severity of the customer's disability. Transition services are a subset of vocational rehabilitation services for those individuals that are 14 to 22 years old. Transition services are provided to help students move from high school to successful work and independent living. Through partnerships with the schools, VR provides these services to students while they're attending high school, so they'll be prepared when they exit. After a person leaves high school, vocational rehabilitation services continue to be available to them if necessary. In most cases, the services provided to transition students fall into one of these 5 pre-employment transition services, or pre-ETS, categories. 1, career exploration. 2, work-based learning. 3, counseling on post-secondary opportunities. 4, job readiness. And 5, self-advocacy. Vocational rehabilitation counselors. Transition vocational rehabilitation counselors, or TVRCs, are assigned to various schools and spend most of their time on school campuses. Vocational rehabilitation counselors, or VRCs, are counselors with general caseloads and high school liaison assignments. The majority of schools have a counselor assigned. If you're not sure who the assigned counselor is at your school, contact the regional transition specialist for your area. WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. WIOA emphasizes transition and youth services. Many students with disabilities are leaving secondary school without competitive integrated employment or without being enrolled in post-secondary education, and there's a need to support such students as they transition from school to post-secondary life. WIOA Title IV. Title IV of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act changes the way transition services are provided through vocational rehabilitation. VR programs are required to spend 15% of their federal funding allocation on pre-ETS, which is pre-employment transition services, to eligible and potentially eligible students with disabilities. Pre-ETS services are intended to provide exposure to the concepts and experiences related to building skills for work and independent living, and are therefore more effective when started early. WIOA also contains a requirement that VR counselors attend ARD meetings when invited. WIOA introduced a new eligibility status, which is potentially eligible. As a means to give access to pre-ETS activities, some individuals will be able to participate as potentially eligible. For this to occur, they must meet the definition of a student with a disability, and this is not intended to circumvent the vocational rehabilitation process. When it is realized that other services are needed, an application for services must be completed. Services for potentially eligible populations are limited to pre-ETS services. How to get started. Work with your assigned VR counselor to refer students for services. Parents, you can also contact a vocational counselor to discuss services for your child. If you aren't sure who the counselor is, call your nearest Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation Office or your area's regional transition specialist. I will also include my contact information at the end of this presentation. The counselor will schedule appointments at the school, in the Workforce Solutions office, at other locations, or remotely to complete the application for services. The counselor will discuss the VR process with students and parents, which includes determining eligibility, and if eligible, assessing and planning for services. Again, my name is Jamie Long, and I'm a transition vocational rehabilitation counselor for Wichita County. Here you'll find my contact information. If you have any additional questions or are interested in vocational rehabilitation services, you're welcome to reach out to me on my business cell phone number, which is 940-613-8902. I look forward to hearing from you and working together in the future. On the next slides, you'll find more information about regional transition specialist contact information and federal funding.
Please let me introduce Jamie from Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation. We will begin the Q&A session. How many students use your services?
Our goal is to serve 150 students per year, and this can be through both potentially eligible and the full array of services that they could apply for through an application.
How has services changed regarding COVID-19?
So of course, COVID has changed the way things are being conducted for almost everyone. With VR, we're still teleworking at this point, but we are able to conduct appointments over the phone. We utilize platforms like Microsoft Teams, Zoom. We can participate in meetings, like I said, by phone or video. And we recently utilized a platform called Easy Virtual Fair, where we were able to host a resource fair virtually and kind of conduct some of those services with students while they were at schools.
What transportation options are available?
Transportation is obviously a really important factor. Everything that we do is based around an employment goal. So our services are to help someone prepare for, get, and keep a job. And transportation is really important in that. So some of the ways that we have helped with this before is driver's training, assisting a student with that portion of the training so they can get their license and have an independent means for transportation. And we also can assist with bus training. So if getting your license isn't something that you feel is, what you would like to do or ready to do, then learning how to utilize the local transportation system could also be another good resource to ensure that you have a way to get to work so you can get and keep that job that you want.
What does vocational rehabilitation do for people?
So our services, like I said, are for those that are transition specifically 14 to 22 that have a disability in an educational setting. And we want to work with the student to prepare for employment. So looking at what your strengths are, your interests are, how does that align with a long-term employment goal? Exploring those things to make sure that you're able to plan for your life when you leave high school. Other services that we utilize are work readiness training. So building on those skills that you'll need for employment, work-based learning, getting some exposure in a workplace setting and building some transferable skills and starting to feel more comfortable in the workplace. Self-advocacy, that's another big one. Do you know what your disability is and how it affects you? Would you want to disclose that to an employer one day? And what kind of accommodations might be helpful for you when you're working or in training to be as successful as you can be?
Does this program offer both academic and social activities?
So we do have some supports for the academic portion. We assist with counseling and guidance on post-secondary education opportunities. So are you thinking about going to school after high school for training for a job that you have in mind? We can assist with trying to access accommodations and training, looking at those different schooling opportunities and helping you work through that process and get all of the supports that you might need to be successful there. And then as far as the social side, for us, the social interaction is important as far as the exploration and the exposure, building those transferable skills, learning how to interact with a supervisor or coworker, and increasing those soft skills so you can be a good employee no matter where you ultimately get a job.
What sets your organization apart from others?
I think the ability to really individualize the services in the case is really important. No two students are the same. They could have the same disability diagnosis, but it doesn't mean that the disability-related impediments are the same or the ways that it affects them is the same. So I think that being able to really individualize a plan and look at these impediments in a holistic way is really important. And the ability to really meet someone where they are and plan moving forward from there, I feel is really beneficial and you know, what makes our services really important.
What family support services are available?
So as a student, obviously their parents or their guardians would most likely be involved. And so I think that having a collaborative approach to assessing and planning and determining, you know, the goals and the services that would be appropriate, the informed choices, and just the collaborative discussions is really important and helps the family as a whole. This is a transition for not just the student leaving high school and going into the real world, but it's also a transition for the parents. And so making sure that they have the resources, the information to plan and feel prepared, I think is a really great support service for the family as well.
Thank you for attending the vocational rehabilitation session. Each session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube page after the event.
Thank you.